Alright, so now you bought a Bugatti. Congratulations! You spent somewhere around $3 million and you now own one of roughly 500 Chirons Bugatti will ever build, or one of the 250 tourbillons currently rolling out of a small workshop in eastern France at a rate of about one every 4 days. You just bought the automotive equivalent of a fighter jet, and the hard part is over, or at least that's what you think. Because in the world of ultra-luxury cars, the purchase price is never the actual price. It's not even the biggest number in this story. Because unlike almost every other car on Earth, a Bugatti doesn't really depreciate the way you'd expect. Some of them have gone up in value since new. What actually gets expensive, brutally and repeatedly expensive, is simply keeping the thing alive. And the reason for that has almost nothing to do with horsepower. It has to do with the fact that when you bought this car, you didn't just buy a vehicle. You bought your way into the smallest, least competitive repair market in the entire automotive industry. Something special about Bugatti is that this car was never built on a line. At Bugatti's atelier in Mosheim, roughly 20 people hand-assemble each Chiron from more than 1,800 individual parts. 2 chassis building stations exist in the entire building, and at each one, 3 technicians spend about a week assembling a single chassis, and every one of them has to be capable of building the whole thing, not just one station's worth of it. Before your car is even cleared for delivery, professional test drivers put it through at least 350 kilometers and 8 hours of testing, including technicians specifically trained to listen for any unwanted resonance in the cabin. Order to delivery takes roughly 9 months with average customization, and longer if you ask for anything unusual. And on a car with something like 31 million possible color and trim combinations, unusual is easy to hit by accident. You also can't simply walk in and buy one. Bugatti vets buyers before allocating a build slot, and prior ownership history genuinely helps your case. Here's why any of that matters economically. Because the real question isn't how much a Bugatti costs to run. It's what happens to a machine economically the moment it stops benefiting from mass production. Let's start with the number that should have been your first warning sign, because it happened before you even owned the car. For years, Wall Street analysts have estimated that Volkswagen, Bugatti's parent company for most of its modern life, was losing somewhere around $6.25 million on every single Veyron it sold. The car's price tag was around $1.7 million. The estimated cost to actually build one, once you spread Bugatti's roughly $1.6 billion research and development bill across only a few hundred cars, came out closer to $6 to $8 million each. Bugatti has publicly called those numbers implausible, and the company has never opened its books to confirm them. But even by the most conservative reading, everyone agrees on the shape of the story. Bugatti was never supposed to make money selling you the car. It was built to lose money, on purpose, as the most expensive advertisement in Volkswagen Group's history. So if the manufacturer isn't trying to make its money on the car itself, it has to make it back somewhere. And somewhere turns out to be you, for as long as you own it. Start with the most infamous line item in Bugatti ownership, the tires. The original Veyron didn't run on anything you could buy at a tire shop. Michelin built a completely bespoke tire called the Pilot Sport Pax, a run-flat design glued, not just mounted, onto a specially made wheel, because nothing else could survive the car's top speed without disintegrating. A set of 4 ran about $42,000. And here's the part that actually hurts. Bugatti required owners to replace that set every 18 months, whether the car had been driven or not, because the glue bond holding the rubber to the wheel could degrade sitting in a garage. On top of that, the wheels themselves, priced north of $40,000 each in some estimates, and up to $69,000 a set in others, had to be replaced every 3rd tire change, because Bugatti considered the rims consumable too. For years, the only place on Earth that could even perform the tire mounting process was a facility back in France, meaning owners were shipping wheels overseas just to get new rubber glued on. Bugatti eventually admitted in an interview with one of its own engineers that this was a problem, and the Chiron moved to a standard rim design specifically so tires could be changed at a normal shop instead of flown to Europe. Genuine progress. Except the newest, most extreme version of that same car, the Chiron Pure Sport, ended up under a formal recall because its specialized tires were cracking after as little as 1,875 miles, meaning some owners were still being told to replace a set roughly every year and a half, on a car that cost more than $4 million. None of this is really a story about tires. It's a story about what happens to pricing when there is no competing supplier on Earth. When your Toyota needs new tires, a dozen brands compete for your business, and the price gets beaten down by that competition. When your Bugatti needs new tires, there's exactly one company that makes them, exactly one company that approved them, and until fairly recently, exactly one country that could install them. That is not a supply chain. That is a monopoly, and you agreed to be its only customer the moment you signed the paperwork. And it doesn't stop at tires. A set of Chiron headlights has been priced at around $164,000, more than the price of a brand new Porsche 911, for 2 plastic housings. A basic annual service on a Veyron has run owners somewhere around $20,000 before anything has actually gone wrong. Compare that to a Ferrari, where a major service might run you $15,000 on the high end, and you start to see the shape of it. Bugatti isn't expensive because it's a little nicer than a Ferrari. It's expensive because a Ferrari owner has options, independent specialists, a global network of part suppliers, decades of second-hand knowledge built up because tens of thousands of Ferraris exist. A Bugatti owner has none of that. Bugatti has built roughly 450 Veyrons and roughly 500 Chirons in the car's entire history combined. There simply isn't enough of a population of these cars anywhere on Earth for an independent repair economy to form around them. You are not a customer in a market. You are the entire market, one car at a time, and the manufacturer knows it. This is where the story usually gets treated as a punchline. Rich people problems, a $164,000 headlight, haha. But it gets a lot more serious once you look at what happens when something actually goes wrong. Because the same scarcity that inflates a tire bill turns a genuine accident into a financial and legal nightmare. In October of 2009, a Texas Savage dealer named Andy House bought a used Bugatti Veyron for $1 million and insured it for $2.2 million. A few weeks later, on November 11th, he drove it toward a bridge near Lamarck, Texas, and steered directly off the road into the Gulf Bay. He told first responders he'd swerved to avoid a low-flying Pelican. He left the engine running as the car sank, which let salt water flood the intake and destroy it completely. The very next day, he called his insurer and filed a $2.2 million claim. There was just one problem. Another driver had filmed the whole thing on a cell phone, and the video showed a car traveling in a smooth, deliberate line straight into the water. No swerve, no Pelican, low flying or otherwise, anywhere in frame. The FBI, the Texas Rangers, and local police opened an investigation. And 5 years later, in 2014, House pleaded guilty to wire fraud. He was sentenced to a year and a day in federal prison. Here's why that story matters for anyone thinking about actually owning one of these cars, beyond the sheer audacity of it. Insuring a Bugatti is not like insuring a normal exotic car, because there's no deep, liquid secondhand market to price it against. When an insurer writes a policy on a car this rare, they're not pricing against thousands of comparable sales the way they would with a Porsche. They're pricing against a tiny handful of transactions worldwide on an asset whose value can swing enormously based on condition, mileage, and provenance. That pricing uncertainty is exactly the gap House tried to exploit, insuring a salvage history car for more than double what he'd actually paid for it, betting that the insurer's own uncertainty about the car's true value would work in his favor. It didn't, but the fact that it was even a plausible scheme tells you something real. The extreme rarity that makes a Bugatti desirable is the same rarity that makes it almost impossible to insure with any real precision, which is a large part of why premiums on these cars run so high in the first place. Now, put all three of these pieces together. The manufacturer losing millions per car by design, the total absence of any competing repair market, and an insurance system that has to guess at value because there's nothing to compare it to, and you start to see the actual mechanism running underneath everything. A Bugatti is not priced or maintained like a car. It is priced and maintained like a one-off piece of aerospace hardware that happens to have a license plate. Aerospace parts are expensive because they're low volume, custom engineered, and made by a single certified supplier with zero competitive pressure. That is precisely the economic environment Bugatti operates in, not because the company's being greedy, but because at a production run of a few hundred units in total, there is no other economic model available. You cannot build a competitive aftermarket around the part that only exists on 450 cars worldwide. So every single component, from the tires to the headlights to the engine block itself, gets priced the way a one-off satellite component gets priced. Cost plus, take it or leave it, because you have nowhere else to go. And this is precisely why the depreciation story runs backwards compared to every other car on the planet. A normal exotic, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, even a Porsche 911 GT3, loses value the moment you drive it off the lot, because the market can always make another one next year. Bugatti made a business decision to never let that happen. By keeping production numbers in the low hundreds and treating every sale as a marketing loss rather than a profit center, the company accidentally, or not so accidentally, created one of the only vehicle categories on Earth where scarcity dominates depreciation. Well-kept Bugattis have sold for more than their original sticker price. You're not really buying a depreciating asset. You're buying a fixed supply collectible that happens to also require $42,000 tires every 18 months, whether you drive it or not. So here's the actual math of having a Bugatti. The purchase price, several $1,000,000, mostly behaves like an investment. It might hold its value. It might even climb, because so few of these cars will ever exist. But layered on top of that is a permanent recurring tax that has nothing to do with how much you drive it and everything to do with the fact that you are the sole customer of a company with no competitors. Tens of thousands of dollars a year in mandatory servicing. Tens of thousands more the moment tires or wheels come due on their calendar-based schedule rather than a mileage-based one. Insurance premiums built on guesswork because there's no real market to benchmark against. And individual parts, a headlight, a turbo, a wheel, priced high enough to buy an entirely different car outright. So if you do have a Bugatti, understand what you actually own. You don't own a car in the way that word normally works, where thousands of other owners, independent mechanics, and competing suppliers keep the price of staying on the road honest. You own a piece of hand-built, single-source aerospace hardware, made of numbers small enough that no market has ever been able to form around keeping it alive. And every single year, you pay the toll on that scarcity, whether the car ever leaves the garage or not.